Pam Bondi wasn't supposed to win that night. She was outnumbered, out-cheered, and up against one of the loudest voices in Hollywood. The cameras were rolling, the studio was packed, and the nation was watching. Across from her sat Robert De Niro, or, as the host introduced him, a titan of truth, a man who never backs down. And he didn't, at first. He came ready to mock, to belittle, to dominate. And for a moment, it looked like he might. But then, she said one thing, just one. And everything changed. The crowd stopped clapping. The host leaned forward. And Robert De Niro, the man who's never short on words, fell silent. What started as a televised debate turned into something else entirely. By the end, one of them would walk off the stage, and the other would walk away with the truth on her side, and the internet at her back. This wasn't just political. This was personal, and you're about to see why. The set was polished. The lights were sharp. The tone was casual, but charged. You could tell from the start, this wasn't going to be civil for long. Tonight, the host announced, we bring together two very different voices. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi and Hollywood icon Robert De Niro. The audience cheered loudly for De Niro. Cameras caught his half-smile, the smug kind. He adjusted his cuffs, leaned back in his chair, and waited for his moment. Bondi, in contrast, didn't play to the crowd. She sat upright, calm, dressed in a bold royal blue, hands folded in her lap. She didn't fidget. She didn't smile. She waited. The host opened with a softball. Robert, you've been very critical of Donald Trump, recently calling him a walking constitutional crisis. What do you mean by that? De Niro didn't hesitate. Oh, it's simple, he said. He's a disgrace, a fraud, and people like her, he thumbed toward Bondi without even looking, are the reason he ever got this far. Laughter from the crowd. A few claps. Bondi didn't flinch. She's not a lawyer, he continued. She's a cheerleader, a puppet, Fox News' favorite mouthpiece. And frankly, she should be ashamed. The camera cut to Bondi. No blinking, no twitch, just a soft, unshaken stare. Then she spoke. Robert, she said calmly, you've played mob bosses, war veterans, even boxers. But tonight you're playing something else, a man so angry he forgot how facts work. A beat. The audience quieted slightly. She continued. You say I'm a puppet, but let me remind you, I served as Attorney General of Florida for nearly a decade. I prosecuted drug cartels, human traffickers, and corrupt officials. I didn't read scripts. I read indictments. De Niro chuckled bitterly, trying to cut in. But Bondi wasn't done. And as for being ashamed, she tilted her head. I'm not the one pretending to care about the Constitution, only when it suits my narrative. The room shifted. The energy changed. De Niro leaned forward now. His smile had faded, just slightly. The host tried to redirect. Okay, let's keep this focused. But Bondi raised a hand gently. Not to interrupt, to finish. You want to talk about disgrace? She asked. Then let's talk about results. Lowest black unemployment in U.S. history. Criminal justice reform passed. Border security tightened. You don't have to like the man, but don't pretend the numbers don't exist. The crowd was still. De Niro opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Bondi looked over at him and added, and let me make one thing clear. I'm not here to defend a man. I'm here to defend the truth. Can you say the same? Boom. No yelling, no theatrics, just one clean hit, and suddenly, the mob boss wasn't in control. The host looked over, clearly caught off guard. The studio, just 5 minutes earlier, full of laughs, was now silent. Watching. Waiting. Bondi leaned back in her chair, calm as ever. And that's when De Niro tried to take the moment back. Robert De Niro sat forward now, the smirk gone, but the fire still burning. He wasn't going to let a prosecutor steal his spotlight. "Oh, please," he scoffed. "You're throwing stats around like they erase the chaos. Trump wasn't a leader. He was a game show host with power, and you helped him stay in the chair." Some audience members cheered. The energy surged for a moment, but not like before. Pam Bondi didn't raise her voice. She didn't look rattled. She simply nodded. "You say he was a game show host," she replied. "But I say results matter more than resume. We've had polished presidents who did nothing, and loud presidents who delivered. I care about what got done." She turned slightly toward the host. "May I?" The host nodded, eyes locked on her. Bondi pulled a printed page from a folder beside her. "This is a quote from Robert, from a 2015 interview," she said. "I think Trump's shaking things up. It might be what the country needs." Gasps. A few people looked at each other. De Niro stared at the paper. "I never said that in support," he snapped. "Context matters." "And it does," Bondi said. "So let's talk about context. In 2015, before the media turned, before the talking points hardened, you saw what many Americans saw, someone calling out the system. But now, you pretend it was always hatred." De Niro shook his head. "You're twisting my words." "No," Bondi said calmly. "I'm remembering them." She leaned forward slightly. "You've made a career out of criticizing leaders. Fine. That's your right. But don't pretend your history doesn't exist. You weren't always this angry, Robert. Somewhere along the way, you traded truth for applause." Silence again. The host tried to reset. "Let's pivot. Pam, what do you think is the biggest threat facing America right now?" "Double standards," she answered instantly. "We demonize people not for what they say, but for who says it. We cancel voices not because they're wrong, but because they're inconvenient." She turned back to De Niro. "You call Trump dangerous. Fine. But when Obama launched drone strikes without congressional approval, you called it leadership. When kids were held in cages during the last administration, you looked the other way." De Niro's face was tight now. "You act like outrage equals virtue," Bondi continued, "but outrage without consistency is just performance." He exhaled hard. "You think you know everything?" "No," she said, "just enough to know the game being played." The crowd shifted again, less laughter, more leaning forward. Bondi wasn't attacking. She was unveiling. And De Niro? He wasn't just losing ground. He was losing the room. Then came the moment that flipped the entire night. Pam Bondi reached down slowly, opened her bag, and pulled out a folded envelope. She didn't wave it. She didn't tease it. She simply held it. "Robert," she said softly, "you don't remember this, but in 2012, we met at a veterans fundraiser in Tampa. You spoke briefly. We shared a table." De Niro squinted. "I don't recall." "You were polite, candid, even kind. You asked about my work, and afterward, you sent this." She unfolded the letter. "Pam," she read, "thanks for the conversation. I appreciated your candor. We may disagree on politics, but I respect your convictions." Gasps, whispers. De Niro shook his head. "That was private." "And I kept it that way," Bondi replied, "for over a decade, until tonight, when you came on national television to call me a puppet." The host looked stunned. The control room? Frozen. Bondi continued. "You weren't always this hostile. You didn't always see people like me as enemies. But now? You trade decency for claps. You perform rage like it's a monologue." De Niro opened his mouth. "Nothing." "You say I've changed," Bondi said, "but maybe you're just seeing me clearly for the first time. Because I'm not here to play a character. I'm not here for viral clips. I'm here because facts matter, even when they're inconvenient." De Niro stood up abruptly. The host reached out. "Robert, please." But it was too late. This was a setup, he muttered, tearing off his mic. He turned to leave. Pam Bondi didn't move, didn't flinch, just whispered, "Guess we found the real performance after all." The studio wasn't just quiet, it was stunned. For all his fire and fury, Robert De Niro had no words left. He stood there, mic in hand, breathing heavy, searching for a response that wouldn't come. Pam Bondi, still seated, still calm, still in control. The host attempted to salvage the segment. "Maybe we should take a quick break." But De Niro's voice cut through, sharp, bitter. "No," he growled. "Let's stop pretending this wasn't an ambush." Bondi turned her head, just slightly. "Is truth an ambush, Robert?" He stepped back. "You brought a letter from over a decade ago to smear me on national TV." She nodded. "No, I brought your own words. You wrote them. I just reminded you." The tension snapped like a wire. De Niro pulled off his microphone, dropped it onto the desk with a hard thud, and stormed off set without another word. The host sat frozen, jaw half open. The audience? Silent. Shocked. Some leaning forward, others glancing at each other like they weren't sure what they'd just witnessed. Pam Bondi simply adjusted her blazer, folded the letter, and placed it back in her bag. Then she looked directly at the host and said, "Guess we just found out who the real actor was." The clip was on YouTube within 10 minutes, Twitter within 5, Instagram and TikTok not long after, and everywhere it went, it exploded. Bondi Mic Drop trended worldwide by midnight. Every political show podcast, reaction channel. They all had something to say. Some called it ruthless, some called it righteous. But no one could deny what they saw. A Hollywood legend walking off live television, and a conservative woman refusing to back down. Comment sections lit up. "I'm no Bondi fan, but she absolutely bodied him." She didn't yell. She didn't mock. She just dismantled him. "I've never seen De Niro that rattled." Mainstream media couldn't ignore it either. Headlines flooded in. Pam Bondi silences De Niro in live debate showdown. The letter that shut down Robert De Niro. From calm to crushing, how Bondi flipped the script. Backstage, producers scrambled to rerun the segment hourly. Commentators were already drafting op-eds. YouTube thumbnails popped up with glowing text. She ended him. But Pam Bondi? She didn't stay for interviews, didn't gloat. She left the building with the same composure she walked in with. One clip, one conversation, and one letter later, she didn't just survive the stage, she owned it. And America watched every second.